Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another live landlord webinar, and our first for 2021, which is really exciting. Obviously, we are right on 6 o'clock, so I'm going to presume that not everyone is as on time as us. I'm always late, and these are about the only events. Kirsty is laughing because they're about the only events that I'm on time for. So look, guys, while we do get through a little bit of housekeeping there, and I think we've got Zoe logging into as well, so might just get to make sure she's muted. While we do wait for everyone to log on, I'm just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping for you. So first of all, for the first timers who are joining us tonight, if you do have any questions throughout this evening, if you can just make sure at the bottom of the, and Zoe, I'll just get you to mute yourself. Thank you. Great. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a little Q&A section. Any questions that you have, feel free to put them in on the bottom of the screen. What we'll do is we're going to try and hopefully leave some time at the end of this evening to come back and answer any of your questions. We might not be able to answer them on the spot as we go, but we will do it at the end of the night. And if we do run out of time, because we're very conscious it is in the evening, if this goes a little bit too long, as long as we've got your email and your name, we'll make sure that we email you any responses as well. Now, obviously, we've created these events to host our own landlords, but we do open these forums up to a lot of other investors, as well as private landlords, and of course, other agencies out there as well. So if you are not one of our current landlords, first of all, welcome. It's great to have you here. But also, please be aware that the information that we provide in these evenings, although it's generally relevant to the industry, the handling or the procedures can be quite specific to our business. So just bear that in mind. The opinions, of course, based throughout this webinar are ours only, and we do accept that no two situations are the same, and we do encourage you to talk to your individual property manager, as well as all your agency or your solicitors or key stakeholders regarding your own properties and your own situations. And our final disclaimer before we get on for the night, we are not financial advisors, planners or solicitors, and we are not qualified to give any financial or legal advice. So these are opinions only, and if you do have situations that require professional financial or legal advice, you do need to seek your own professionals in that field. So for the first time tonight, and hopefully we've got most people on board now, for the first time tonight, welcome to all our rental providers. You're no longer called a landlord. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. You're now a rental provider, and our tenants, if we do have any, welcome to our renters. So that's right. We're starting 2021, the new age, with some new names. I am joined tonight by Kirsty Patterson. She is on screen, and I'm going to get her involved very shortly. Kirsty is, I guess, one of our brains trust in our business. She is our head of department and probably best on ground at the moment in terms of handling the queries that you may have in regards to the legislation. Just want you to be aware that Kirsty and our team have all gone through some really extensive and probably, I believe, I'm very proud, probably best on ground in terms of extensive training and work in making sure that we are 100% up to date in the legislation. But it is an evolving matter because we're learning as we go, because it's never been done before and there hasn't been a huge amount of directive from some of the important areas that we need. So if there are questions we can't answer, we'll be very open about that. We'll come back to you over the coming weeks or months as we go. So I'll call on Kirsty very shortly, but as you should well be aware, because we've been sending lots of communications and videos, we have started working under the new tenancy regulations as of Monday. And with 132 residential changes to the Tenancies Act and regulations, we wanted to talk to you tonight about some of the most common questions that we've been fielding over the last couple of months. For those of you who've been a part of our journey and our landlords, obviously we've already done some webinars. We had Hayley Mitchell and Leah Kellman and lots of people speak over the last 6 or 8 months to make sure you're educated. But there is still a lot of questions out there. And what I'm going to do is we put together probably a list of about the 10 to 15 most common questions, and I'm going to throw those over to Kirsty to sort of dissect for you as best as possible. And of course, if the conversation comes up and there are any other questions along the way, we'll do our best to answer them. So, Kirsty, welcome. You can take yourself off mute now.
Thanks, Dean.
We're going to dive straight into it, Kirst. No little chit chat. We've been talking all day. Let's start and with probably one of the first steps. Disclosure statements are now a part of tenancies. Can you talk to us about what a disclosure statement actually means for our rental providers?
Yes, so before a renter enters into a rental agreement, we do need to disclose certain information to them. So we will work through a list that we do have on a checklist with our rental providers. I'll go through some of the items that we will be needing information on. So if the property is, if there's a proposal for the property to be sold, we need to disclose that to the tenant. If there's an embedded electrical network, so for local people, Waterford Rise has Red Train, which is, I guess, a service that tenants need to be aware of. If there's any dampness or any mould issues in the property in the past, the dates of any electrical safety checks or gas safety checks that we're now required to do every 2 years, we need to provide dates of when these were last done, so the tenant's aware of the safety requirements. If there's been a homicide at the property in the last 5 years, that needs to be disclosed. And if there's any building permits or planning permits on the property while the tenant is going to be living there, that also needs to be disclosed. So I guess they're really important details.
Very much like for any of the landlords out there who have dabbled in commercial real estate, they'd be familiar with the disclosure statement. And that's, in commercial world, it's about energy ratings and other costs that they might be associated with. It's very similar, but it is a lot more about the health and safety of the home. And as you heard, things such as a homicide, anything that may affect their willingness to want to take over that property, really, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Great. And that gets attached, that has to be provided right at the beginning of the tenancy.
That's right. So before the tenant signs a lease, we will actually give them a copy of this checklist that we go through with our rental providers, and it will have all the details on there so they can make an informed decision before taking on the tenancy.
Great, and I think that's important to note. So to our rental providers, you'll be a part of that. You'll have to actually sign off on that. So it'll be a questionnaire that we take you through right at the time of listing. Realistically, that's when that will get done.
That's right.
All right, so let's get into question number 2, and this has been around urgent repairs. So there's been a lot of talk about this because there has been some adjustment, but urgent repair amounts have been changed, haven't they?
Yes, that's right. So in the past, it's been $1,800 and it's going up to $2,500. So there's also some different requirements around what tenants can use that for. So we've always had our list of the urgent repairs, and now if there's cooling in the property when the tenants move in, that now forms part of that list, and also the minimum standards. So if the tenant is in the property and an item on the minimum standards list needs attention, that now forms part of the urgent repairs.
Okay, so I guess moving away from just that, flooding or fire or, really catastrophic stuff, it is about any of those minimum standards, heating, cooling, all that sort of stuff. We don't have the right to say, well, it's not hot today or it's not cold today. They fall under urgent repairs, and the tenant can proceed up to $2,500 on that.
That's right. So I guess it's all about safe living and the property being comfortable for the tenant. So that's where the new requirements have come into urgent repairs.
Great. Okay. So no questions are filled there yet. So let's get into rental increases, because obviously with the omnibus bill and over COVID, there hasn't been allowed to be any rental increases. We're getting a lot of questions, Kirsty, can we increase rents now?
Yes, so I guess we have had this large gap where we haven't been able to increase rents, and there's been a rise in rents in the local market. So we can now. We can do a rent increase every 12 months if the market allows for it. So we do have to provide evidence of, I guess, the increase in the property to the tenant. There's been a change in the way we do our notices that we do need to provide evidence. But yes, every 12 months, if they're not on a lease, then that can happen. We can review the rents in the coming months, and if they are on a lease, then we'll wait until that is expiring.
And rental increases are now a maximum of once per 12 months now.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's increased. So I think it used to be 6, didn't it?
Yes, it was 6, and now it's gone to once every 12 months as a maximum. Yeah.
All right. Now, you mentioned before, so I think it's a good one to come back to, rules around selling properties. So this has got a lot of landlords talking, and it's obviously one that our sales teams are involved in as well. So it's a really important piece to get correct. So what are the new rules around, or the new regulations around landlords selling their properties?
So before the first inspection occurs, we need to issue the tenant with a notice of intention to sell. So it's a 14-day notice that we do, I guess, ourselves in property management. And then from there, when the inspections are taking place, there's 2 inspections a week, and we do have to give, I guess, the tenant required notice. We also now have to give them compensation for the inspection. So it's either $30 or half a day's rent, depending on which is higher.
Yeah. So this this was a bit of alarm bells to a lot of landlords, but in realistic terms, it's not that much different to what we've been working with. A tenant has been able to apply for compensation when a home goes on the market. It's just that there was never anything actually defined. This is actually just defined what the rules are. It's a maximum of, I think it's a half a day's rent or a maximum, $30, whichever is the greater.
That's right.
Yep. So for a lot of our landlords, it will fall under that $30. So anything under about $420 a week will fall into that $30 a week category. If your property's over $420 a week, it'll be a half day's rent. But it actually just makes that, quite stringent. It's there. The tenants will know it. It's nice and in place. Our sales teams are going to have to make sure they understand that. And just so you're aware, to our rental providers, we've already run some training sessions with our sales team. I have no doubt we're going to have to jog their memory as we go, Kirsty, because obviously they can be one of the first contacts in those situations. But anything can still be done with approval of the tenant too, can't it? I think that's the important piece.
That's right. Yes. So I guess if the renter approves 3 inspections a week, then that's fine. It is by agreement. We have just informed our sales team of the maximum that we're allowed to do without the tenant being, agreeing to extra, which is important.
And I think in practical terms, it will probably mean, and we haven't really thought this 100% through yet, we're going to wait and see how it goes. But I would be expecting rental providers that we're going to see a lot more open for inspections conducted on your properties rather than private inspections, which has pros and cons, but it will just make that a little bit easier in that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to talk about probably the one that even worried me as a landlord, and we keep getting asked, can a tenant paint the home themselves these days without permission?
So under the new regulations, if a tenant wants to paint, I guess, a room in the house, they do need to ask for permission from the rental provider, and we can't unreasonably withhold permission. So it does depend on, I guess, what colour, how many walls, if it's been professionally done. But if it's a reasonable request, then we can just put in place that they need to put it back to the standard it was when they moved in, when they vacate. And we can also ask for a bond, an extra bond on that to make sure that it is done.
So I was just going to say, if the work is major, we for the first time ever, we haven't been able to do that before, but if the work is major, we can actually look for an increased bond, can't we?
We can, and that bond will be there to cover the cost of the rectification works. And I think that's a really good offering, because if that wasn't there, then I guess if the tenant did vacate, we would just have the standard bond amount to cover that. So I think that's actually a good addition to the rules.
Like anything, rental providers, I keep going to say landlords, I think I've done okay so far. It will be just the minority that this is a real issue for. In all reality, most renters are not going to want to go and spend a lot of money on your property. That's the reality. Where you might see it is if they want to do a feature wall in one room or something like that, which at the end of the day is not going to be a major cost. But so I don't think we have to worry about tenants going out and painting a whole house and doing it weird and wonderful polka dots. I just don't think that what our initial fears were are going to be the case.
No, I agree. I think it might be if there's a child's room or something like that that they'd like to freshen up. That could be something that we do see, but I agree with you. I don't think we'll see tenants painting whole houses.
No. And so I don't think you mentioned it, but just on that, picture hooks, right? Can they put those up with permission?
So they can put picture hooks up without permission. Once again, they do have to fix any damage to the wall and put the wall back to how it was before they vacate. But picture hooks and TV brackets, they're things that the tenants don't need permission to do. Obviously, we'll note them at our routine inspections when we see that has been the case, so that our rental providers know what's happening, but certainly something they can do without our permission.
Okay, now we have had a question come in. I will come back to it at the end. I haven't had a chance to read it in depth, and it looks in depth. But there was something around notice to vacate. So I just want to bring that one up, because we're getting a lot of that at the moment as well. If a landlord wishes their tenant to vacate, how do they go about that now?
So the only notice that's been removed is the 120-day no reason notice. So the question we've just had come through, I can touch on it. I guess it's really relevant to your question, Pete. So if an owner wants to occupy their property, it's a 60-day notice. So we are doing, getting our, I guess, rental providers to provide stat decks as to why they're wanting to occupy the property, because it does help with that evidence piece if it does go to VCAT. So we're just trying to provide as much information as we can with all of our notices so that there's, I guess, not that block at VCAT if it does end up at that point. We've got everything ready to go.
Yeah, so I guess just to recap that a little bit, giving notice to vacate on the basis that you're going to sell the home and then putting it back up for rent in 30 or 60 days will not fly. You actually cannot rent the property for a minimum of 6 months. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kirsty.
Yeah.
For a minimum of 6 months, and they will need to see, I'm quite confident they will want to see that you've gone to the effort of listing the place on the market and so forth. It's to avoid people using that as an out clause. So you won't be able to just pretend you're putting it on the market and then not. So yeah, that's a fairly important one.
Yeah, it is. And we've had a few this week where we've had owners listing their properties for sale and we've issued the notice to vacate. And the evidence that we've used in that piece has been a copy of the authority to sell the property and just blacking out all the personal details. And that is a really good piece of evidence to use. So if it does go to VCAT, similar to the stat deck, it covers our rental providers.
Yeah. And obviously you're listing online and all those sorts of things, invoices for advertising will form a part of it. So providing it is legitimate going to market, it just won't be an issue, and it's quite simple, no different to what we've been dealing with. But if you were trying to use it as a bit of a scapegoat, whole different story.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so compliance and safety checks. This is a huge change in the regulations, and there are some very specific requirements and dates that we do need to comply with now, Kirsty, to ensure that rental providers, that your properties are safe. So, Kirsty, let's talk about how often the gas and electrical safety checks need to be done.
Yeah, so they need to be done every 2 years. And we will have, I guess, our own systems in place to, I guess, have reminders as to when these are coming up. We're going to use local trades. We just feel that that's a much better option for our rental providers. If there's then a quote needed after the check is done, they can go back and attend to that work really quickly. The good news is, I guess, for some of the upgrades, we've got until 2023 to have that done. So our aim is to have the checks done so then we can have the quotes come through and owners can then plan and budget for potential upgrades that are needed over that time.
So we've gone through a fairly extensive process on this, everyone, and that is around who is best to handle this work. There's lots of groups out there. We're obviously already using some that you're familiar with, but a large part of it is also ensuring that we can get people back in the event, and that's where we're feeling at the moment our local tradespeople, and we have some amazing local tradespeople, are going to be the best to provide that, because it's not just also the initial checks, but it's when things go wrong, if we need them back, that immediate call to action rather than having to wait for delayed periods. We will have some fairly inclusive SLAs, service level agreements with those tradespeople, but you will get the choice. It will be your decision who you contract with. That's correct, Kirst?
That's right, yeah. So if you've got a preferred plumber or electrician, as long as they're appropriately licensed and insured, then yeah, more than welcome to use those people.
And it is really important to just clarify that they must be appropriately qualified. It's one thing to be a plumber, but not all plumbers are gas experts. They have to meet the minimum standards, and not all our local trades, well, not even all the local trades that we've been using currently, meet those minimum requirements.
That's right. So we have, I guess we've got some really good tradespeople that we're partnering with for this process, and it's because it's just so important that it's done properly from the start, so that you know that your property is compliant and safe, and that the quotes you're getting through to do the work, I guess, is going to be by those qualified people. So yeah, we're really happy with that selection.
What they're trying to do with this legislation to everyone is they are trying to stamp out, like it or not, aunties and uncles and cousins and former roommates doing the work. They are pretty much saying that all your major works and safety work must be done by approved, qualified people in their fields. So, and look, in all fairness, it makes sense. All right, so let's talk about electricals, because we get a lot of this in already. how will they know if their electrical switchboard is compliant?
So that will come up on the electrical safety check. That's part of the compliance. If it does need to be upgraded, then there'll be a quote in place and you'll have time to, I guess, to budget for that work and get that upgraded. We have partnered with a fantastic company called Conveni, and we'll have them on our next session. So what they offer is a service where you've got 2 years to pay for a repair. So they'll pay it up front to the tradesperson, a little bit like Afterpay for property management, which we think is a really great addition for rental providers. And you can factor in numerous types of work. So you may have a switchboard that needs upgrading, you may need a new heater, and you can put all of this onto, I guess, the Afterpay program, and you can pay that off over the 2 years. So a lot of our landlords have been concerned about the cost involved in having their properties compliant, and I think this is a great offering in the marketplace.
Yeah, it is. We're really quite proud to partner with these guys. Well, just to be able to provide you that service, because I know we've all been fielding, both the property management team and the sales team, concerns over if there is these major costs. And we have to be really brutally honest right now. For some of you, there are going to be significant costs. For a large portion of you, there won't be. There might be some minor little alterations and tweaks and things that won't really be an issue. Now, for some of you, you will factor this in, budget it in, and away you go. But for some of you that are sitting there right now going, I won't have the money to do that, we've already worked really hard to find a product. It's not our product, just so you're aware. But we have vetted a couple of different companies, and the company Conveni, we are very confident has a really, it's one of the only products that delivers what they do. And so we're going to have them talk to you next month. We really encourage you to come onto that live so you can ask questions on that one. And they've changed it. When we first spoke to them, Kirst, I reckon it was about $10,000 maximum spending, couple of months to pay it back. The fact that they've brought that out to $50,000 and up to 2 years is a really good product.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess they're really understanding rental providers' needs at the moment, and I think that's great because it is going to be difficult for some people if they do need large upgrades. Yeah.
And so while we're in this maintenance world and compliance world, smoke alarms, because I mean, we've had to be smoke alarm compliant for a long time now, as well as CO2. So has anything changed from a smoke alarm point of view?
No, so smoke alarm checks still the same. So it's still once every 12 months. And I guess our local electricians are on board with doing the smoke alarm checks. A lot of our rental providers would be aware that we've used Smart House in the past, which will still be available. But we are now trying to package that in with the electrical safety checks, so that the smoke alarm happens every year and electrical safety checks every 2 years.
Yeah. And so while we're there, heating requirements?
Sorry?
And heating requirements?
Heating?
Heating, sorry. At the time I'm hungry, but no. So let's talk about the heating requirements on homes as well.
Yeah, so with heaters, there has to be a fixed heater in the lounge room. So we can't have a plug-in freestanding heater. It does need to be a fixed heater. And there will be energy efficiency requirements moving forward as well, which we'll give you some more information about as we go through the process. So
if I can just be practical about this for a minute, Kirsty, let's look at a home built in the 1970s and 1980s that had a wall furnace sitting in the lounge room. It was no longer working, so it got disconnected. We've got a lot of those on our books. And the landlord or rental provider, there's my first slip up. The rental provider has replaced that with a air conditioner, but put it in the dining room, not in the lounge room. But there's a reverse cycle heater air conditioner in the dining area, not the lounge room. That won't meet standard at the moment, will it?
No, it won't. And it won't for two reasons. We do need to have that fixed heater in the main living area, but we also can't leave appliances in the property that are no longer working. So in the past, we would just put a special condition in the lease agreement to say that the gas heater is no longer working and it's been replaced. But now that gas heater has to be removed. So that's something else to be mindful of, because there's not only the cost to replace it, but also to remove the old one.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because I know that we have a lot of properties out there where we've just decommissioned a heater, space heater, gas wall furnace, and rather than having to go and patch up all the wall and pull it out for no real reason, that's what we do. We just say it's not working, we make sure it's acknowledged and there's no issue. Whereas now, moving forward, like it or not, big cost or not, they're going to have to be removed or replaced.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so we manage a lot of new homes, and I actually had this today from within the real estate industry say, I've got a new home, this won't affect me at all. It's not 100% correct. So let's talk about new properties and will they automatically meet minimum standards?
I guess the first reaction for most people is that yes, they should, but the issue we have is with window coverings. So under the new regulations, we now have to have, I guess, block out window coverings in all bedrooms and main lounge rooms. So some of our brand new homes, they may have sheer curtains in the living space and they may have blockouts in the bedrooms. They will have to have blockout curtains or blinds in that lounge area as well. Other than that, they should meet all the other minimum standards.
Beautiful. Now, I've just noticed we've had a question there about the heating from Ben. So I've got ducted heating in the house and reverse cycle in the lounge. Is that okay? That will be.
Absolutely. Yes, because you've got, I guess, fixed heating in that lounge area. So, definitely be compliant.
So it's about bringing back that heating into that fixed area, guys, so into that living space, we should say. Now, the only thing, Ben, there would be if you had a space heater in there as well that wasn't working, well, that won't be compliant and you're going to have to replace it or pull it out. But the ducted heating itself in the lounge room does comply.
That's right.
So while we were talking about window furnishings, let's talk about windows. Because there's new requirements around the standards of windows.
Yes, there is. And I guess this is probably a main problem for older homes, I guess, that have timber windows. The windows have to be able to be set in the open or closed position. So where we have windows that maybe older style sash windows that are broken and they will go up but they don't stay up, they will need to be fixed. And also properties that maybe you've had a window that's been painted shut or just doesn't open, that will also have to be fixed. So for some of our older weatherboard homes, that's definitely going to be something that our owners are going to need to get prices on and get that sorted quite quickly.
Yes, a lot of those old sash windows, the double hung windows that keep falling down, that need a little stick underneath them to probe them up, that won't cut the mustard.
No.
All right. So guys, that was kind of the main. I've got a couple of my own questions that I'm going to throw at Kirsten. I'll try not to put her under the bus, but I have noticed, Kirsty, we've had a couple more questions come through. If you are still tuned in, we've got lots of you online at the moment. If you've got any questions, now would be the perfect time to ask because we're going to throw it over to you. Let's have a look. David, with all the changes, compliance, etc., we are going to have to increase rents to cover the cost. Do you have any idea at this stage what we will need to increase rents by as percentage, basically break even? Have you done any modelling? I'm happy to, or do you want to have it answer that, Kirst?
Yeah, I guess my first answer to that would be that I guess rent increases are based on, I guess, what other similar properties are renting for in the area. So as supply and demand increases, then the rents increase. So I think what will happen is with some owners potentially selling their rental properties because potential compliance issues, I think that supply and demand will become a lot higher. I think we're going to see less properties in the marketplace initially, and I think that will drive rents up a little bit more. I'm not sure how you feel about that, Pete.
Yeah, no, look, at the end of the day, like it or not, the costs involved, one, we haven't done modelling because every single home will be different. Some properties are going to require absolutely nothing and no additions. Others are going to require substantial work. But a lot of the work, and sadly some of the compliance work, may not actually increase the value of the property in terms of its rent on the marketplace. It's no different to when you go and sell a home. Sometimes painting a wall can help improve its value, but putting in an extra bit of rewiring that no one sees may not. The same thing will apply here. Now, if the market increases, absolutely, but rent increases have to be justified in the marketplace. And at the moment, we are expecting to see some increases in rent. So we're hoping that might assist. But at the end of the day, the market rent has nothing to do with what you need to do to maintain your home or have it compliant in the marketplace, David. So I'm hoping that that answers that. Might be what you want to hear, but I'm hoping it answers it for you. We've had another one here regarding heating. So Kirsty, George has asked if there is a decommissioned heater in the lounge room and no other heating, then I assume that the heater that's not working will need to be replaced, or can it be, or it can just be removed?
Yeah, so it'll definitely need to be replaced. So the broken heater will need to be removed and a working heater replaced in that same position in the lounge room. So I guess it's back to what we were talking about before, where, yeah, a non-working appliance needs to be removed.
Yeah. So again, if you have it at the property, if it is in the home, and this might answer the next question, but I'll let you answer it. If it is there, physically present and in eyesight, it must be working, or removed. And in George's situation there, where there's no other heating in that room, it will either have to be replaced, fixed, or another source of heating put into that room, and that one physically removed.
That's right.
And I think, Glenys, that will answer your question there too about the ducted heating. Do you agree with that, Kirsty?
It does, yeah. So I guess ducted heating system that's been disconnected, but the main unit is under the house. The main unit under the house isn't the issue, it's just that the system internally needs to be removed. Yeah.
Okay, we've had another one. Glenys, forget to mention a split system in place of the, in place in the lounge room. I think what you might be saying is you've obviously got heating there, Glenys, in form of a split system in the lounge room, but the ducted heating is still, in theory, present in the room, and it's going to need to be fixed or removed. And in the case, Kirsty, and you're the expert here, but I have a funny feeling Glenys is worried about the ducts in her floor.
Yes, so that, yeah, they will need to be, I guess, removed. I guess they're part of that system. So I guess we would expect that the ducted vents be removed, but you can replace ducted heating with a split system. The only issue would be doing that during a tenancy, because I guess then we have the issue with it being like for like, but if it was between tenants, you could certainly change the type of heating and that wouldn't be a problem at all.
I think too, if I can just chime in there, although we've got these new regulations and the rules are quite specific, like anything, I'm sure there will be some points that break, you know, and so by that, nothing's been fully tested. We had Leah Kellman talk to us the other day, president of the REIV, and even she was saying that there's still a lot of back and forth because they're very clever, these people that write legislation, but they're not very practical. So there's going to be a lot of situations that we're going to come across where we go, I know the rule says X, but I don't think they've considered Y, and we're going to have to seek clarification or information on it. So I would not be surprised, Glenys, if we don't see some other feedback coming on this. But at the moment, according to the legislation, if it's there, it has to be working or physically removed.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think ducts is a really interesting one.
It is.
One that we've already talked about, and I won't lie, I think we've been trying to seek some further clarification on as well. So we will keep you informed on it as to what physically removing that might look like. Does it have to be gone and carpeted over? Can it be sealed up? Just maybe watch this space on that one, Glenys. Good question.
I think there's a few issues like that we are waiting, I guess, on the clarification on. Locks is another one. So part of the legislation is that we need to have deadlocks. So we're seeking clarification at the moment on what type of deadlock, and is that on all the doors? So there are some areas that even the REIV are currently seeking clarification on. So I think we'll just wait for some of those things to come back in and then keep our rental providers informed.
Ben, great question, mate. Is there a timeline available for compliance to be achieved?
Yeah, so if you have, I guess, a lease in place for your current tenant, we're not having to be, I guess, compliant on all of the energy ratings and all those sorts of things straight away. But if your tenant was to vacate and a new tenant moving in, that's where we need to, I guess, get all of those things ready for the new tenancy. We have 2 years every 2 years for the safety checks. So that's not something that's every year. And we have until 2023 for things like switchboard upgrades. So yeah, there are timelines which we can send out some more information to you if you like, but yeah, I guess the dates and timeframes.
I think for our rental providers out there too, We've already, and I won't say it's 100% ready to roll out, but we have been going through all your properties and putting in an order of priority of work. Which properties we know are going to need more work than others, which ones are going to require certain immediate work, which ones we can kind of wait for 6 months or until the lease comes up for expiry. So we are trying to, on your behalf, already create a bit of a workflow for you so that we can contact you over the next few weeks. Again, although they're saying these regulations are in place, we're quite comfortable that no one's going to come stamping down your door tomorrow saying you haven't done it, right? Physically, there's not enough tradespeople to go, and this applies to every single rental property in Victoria and every single landlord in Victoria. So I can promise you this is a consuming topic at the moment, and one that's been stressing Kirsty on screen there quite dramatically. But it is one that we think is quite achievable. And two, I'm going to put Tim's question up here because I think it leads into that. Tim has just said, don't mean to be too obvious, but I work on the assumption that capital value of my property is going to go up, and so reasonable expense should be recouped at sale. And the reality is yes. You know, for a lot of these homes, some of this work is going to be good work that they need. Landlords do often forget that there are two parts to an investment. There is the rental income and there is the capital improved value. And too often people think that properties go up just by the market, and they do. But properties can also be influenced on how well they're maintained. So a home that is well maintained, no different to a car or anything, but when you maintain your home, when you keep the paint up on your home, when your gardens are maintained, your property will improve at a greater value. You know? So a lot of what is being done should be recouped at sale. Some of it may be hidden, right? Let's be honest. If you've got beautiful heating like Glennis already running through your home, but you've got to go and spend some work to pull something out that's, you know, not an eyesore but might be there, that is work that may not necessarily go onto top of the value. But we are in a climbing market. You know, we are seeing properties have increased dramatically. I think the last quarter for the Bawbor Shire went up by about 5.1% from memory. Don't quote me exactly, but I think it was 5.1% just in the last quarter of 2020. We've already seen property prices in February. I haven't seen the March results yet, obviously, but February, Greater Sydney and Greater Melbourne increased by 2% in that month alone. And we're seeing the same reflected in regional Victoria and the same reflected in our marketplace here in the Bawbor Shire. So there is some really good news, and that is that your homes have already gone up in value. And actually, we think at the end of this will be a good thing. It's going to be a bit of short-term pain. And yes, for some of you, there's going to be some decisions to be made if you've got major works to be done. Yeah. So, Kirsty, are you happy with what I've said there to Tim?
No, definitely I am, yes. And Tim's just made another comment that a good tenant is worth keeping happy, and I couldn't agree with him more. I guess at the moment, an occupied property with a good tenant who's going to, I guess, allow work to be done and things like that at your home to make it compliant, I think is, yeah, fantastic comment, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we sometimes get caught up on a few dollars here or a few dollars there. Don't forget that the work you're going to do is going to be, or should be, most of it, I'm not an accountant, not a financial advisor, but a lot of it will be tax deductible and you can write off against your tax. But more importantly, you are going to create a better home that should also increase in rent. So we've had another one, and I love it when you premise it. I hope it's not a dumb question. I'm sure it's not. From Ben, does energy efficiency relate to appliances individually purchased, or does the house have to be assessed overall, like double glazed windows, etc.?
So the energy efficiency is on appliances. It's also on shower heads as well. So we're just making sure that things are water efficient for our tenants or our renters. But the electrical safety and gas safety obviously is on the whole home. So that will include the hot water service and gas cooking appliances and gas heating.
Yeah, so at the moment, and correct me, Kirsty, if I'm wrong, because you're the expert, but it's not been about whether your home has a 7-star or 8-star. It is at the moment about those individual appliances. So shower heads have to have a minimum, I think it's 3-star?
3-star, yeah.
3-star energy or water efficiency ratings. So a bit different to commercial real estate. Commercial real estate and large commercial has some real energy efficient parameters. This is about those individual appliances. So if you've got a dishwasher in there or a heater in there, it's making sure that that's not costing the tenant a fortune to run because of what you've got currently in your property.
That's right.
Now, Kirst, I'm conscious we have been running for a little bit of time, but I was just also going to talk to you about tenancy application forms. They have changed as well, haven't they? So can you just maybe brief us a little bit on those?
Yeah, so they have changed. So there's questions we're no longer allowed to ask our renters. So in the past, we've had on our application forms, has your bond been refunded in full? And if not, why? And we're not allowed to ask that question anymore on the form. There's also some anti-discrimination areas as well that we need to be aware of. So it's pretty much just making the application, I guess in the legislation changes, a very fair document so that all applications can be compared to each other in an equal manner. And then when we ask questions of the person providing the reference, that's when we will ask those questions, which we're allowed to do that.
Fantastic. And the other one, keys. There's been some changes around keys. We've got to provide more copies.
That's right. So if there was 4 tenants moving in or 4 renters moving into a home, we would need to provide 4 full sets of keys. So we can't provide 2 sets and then expect them to go and get sets cut. And that applies to garage remotes as well. So even if you have a double garage, you need to provide 4 remotes. So if there's 4 tenants, they all get one. Very different to what we've done in the past. We've always had the rule that it's single lockup garage, 1 remote, double lockup garage 2, and that has now changed for us.
And George has just asked an interesting question, and I'm going to put it up there, George. With regards to tenant compensation for homes, are there any obligations the tenant needs to adhere to minimum standards in terms of the way they keep the home? Kirst, do you want to answer that before the salesperson in the room?
I would say that that's all about tenant selection when you first put your tenant into the property. So make sure that we are very strict on our reference checking and put the right person in the home, which I guess in our business, we're very strict on that. And then we would expect that tenant to keep the property in a very well presented state for the whole tenancy, including your sales campaign.
Yeah. George, the hard part about minimum, and this is why even if you notice the minimum standards here in the new legislation is very much around safety and not around maintenance. So it's not saying you have to paint a weatherboard as soon as it starts to crack. The hard part is, like anything, what one person thinks is clean and tidy, another person doesn't. You're talking to a very anal and fussy person right here. Kirsty's laughing because she knows it all too well. I have to be honest, the large majority of tenants, the way as a sales team we talk to our tenants about this is we will work as much with you, if you work with us. And, we often talk, and the tenants get it, that the better they present the home, the more likely they are to find another landlord that wants to buy the home. Look, it is difficult. A tenant has no real incentive to present a home the way you would for sale. They're not going to benefit from it. In fact, they might miss out by being kicked out if it sells to an owner-occupier. I've been a tenant of a home that's for sale. They just will always look at it through different eyes. For the large portion of the time, they are great. For the small portion of the time that they are not, we've got ways of working around that for you. But no, there's been no legislation changes to the way a tenant must present a home if it's going on the market. Sorry, mate. All right. Well, guys, we have been gas bagging for a good 40 odd minutes. So there doesn't appear to be any more questions popping up there. Last chance if there is, but I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in again tonight. I hope you get benefit out of these, and I know a lot of landlords like to get the video afterwards. We do love it when you get online and get involved, because there are often questions, as we've seen tonight, that we can just answer on the spot for you. And if you're thinking it, it's not a dumb question. I can guarantee you there are other landlords thinking it. This is evolving. We will be obviously keeping you up to speed. We hope you've been getting all our videos. There will be more information coming out, and our next webinar in April, I think we've got a date set, but we'll save the date out for you early this time. We're going to introduce you to the company Conveni, where they will talk to you about what they can offer. So for those of you who may be expecting some larger costs, or even if they're just minor costs, but cash flow is a concern, We really highly encourage you to get along and listen to that event. That way, if you've got any questions, they can answer it for you direct. So, Kirsty, anything else to add, or we think we're good?
No, that's great. Thanks, Pete.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all your feedback already as well. We really appreciate it. Guys, any questions, don't hesitate. We've got an incredibly dedicated team that are right across this for you. So just give your property manager a call, and we will guide you as best we can through all of these changes. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great Easter. Be safe, and we will talk to you all very soon.